Hi, this is Scott, Kilo Sierra 6 Delta Alpha Yankee, and for today's video, I'm going to be starting a new series and a new type of video that I'm going to be doing on the channel, and that is kind of going back and fulfilling my promises that I made during the reviews I've done on some of these radios, where on the radios that I've said, hey, these are good to go. I think you should get one of these, or I recommend you get one of these, on and on. I'm always talking about going back and showing people how this works and that works, and well, now's the time. We're starting off. I'm going to do this on a number of different radios. Obviously, today I have in front of you an FT-65 and an FT-4X. I'll explain why I have both of them here in just a moment. But I'm also going to definitely be doing the Yaesu FT-60 and the Yaesu VX6, as well as a number of other radios. Some radios that I didn't review very favorably. Obviously, I'm probably not going to get too deep on those. I don't really want to pursue a long-term relationship with those radios, so I'm not going to get to know them all that well. But on these radios that are good to go, yeah, it's time to talk about how to run these things and interface. And everything I'm going to talk about is nothing that comes out of my head. It's all stuff that's easily found in the manual. There's some stuff that you got to search out and you can find out there on YouTube or on Google, but this stuff isn't particularly hard to find. But I do know, because I'm one of these kind of people, there's some folks out there that just learn and absorb the information a little better if they see it being done. Anyone can read a manual, and I get that, but for some folks, that's just not how they process information. And when I was an instructor, I had to learn all of the different ways that people take in information, and then accommodate them. And it's usually pretty easy to spot when it's not resonating with them, so you just adjust your approach and move. So this is one of those approaches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all of the basic functions of the radio. I'm going to go through the programming menus. I'm going to go through the system menus. I'm going to show you some different ways to set the radio up, and just kind of do a deep dive into all of this stuff. So the reason that I have the FT-65 and the FT-4X, though, excuse me, I'm doing both of them because they are similar radios, and there are quite a few things where there is some crossover. But there are also quite a few things where one radio will do a certain thing a certain way, and the other one either won't do it at all or does it in a different fashion. So this is a further illustration of that, and the further illustration that the FT-65 does a lot more than the FT-4X, and that they are genuinely different radios inside. They're not the same radio. They look a lot alike, and they do a lot of the same things, but they are by no means the same radio. So I hope that kind of carries through. But for a lot of folks out there, generally, I know I'm one of them, and I know several people where they own an FT-65 and they have an FT-4X. So we're going to kill two birds with one stone. So the way I'm going to start this, I'm going to start at the upper right-hand corner of the radios, and I'm going to work counterclockwise around the radios and end up on the front panel. And we're going to talk about some of the functions there. I'm not going to get in today to doing things that involve programming either on the set menu or the systems menu. Today is just kind of a basic operations thing. But there are a few little things you might pick up along the way, so it's worth paying attention. And moving forward, these will kind of build on themselves. Obviously, it'll be pretty apparent when I get to the end of this what I'm going to be doing next, but it's going to have to do with the system menu, and then we're going to get into the set menu, and on it goes. So let's go ahead and get into this. Obviously, both radios, and I'm not gonna go so far as to show you how to put the battery in and put the antenna on. I mean, we all kind of know you screw the antenna on by grabbing here and not here. You don't grab the antenna by, you don't swing it around by its antenna. You don't do that. That's ridiculous. So yes, our on-off switch, obviously, turn it to the left till it clicks, radio stops working. Turn it to the right, clicks, radio starts working, all the way to the right, full volume. Duh. Now, it does take us, however, though, to the next thing on the radio. What's with the orange button? I get that a lot. What's with the orange button? What does it do? Well, I will tell you this. The FT-65 does three things. The FT-4X only does one. But that's shared with the 65. So what the orange button is, it's an emergency button. If you were to hold this button down for 3 full seconds, what you're going to get is a large tone, or loud tone rather. Your display screen is going to begin flashing, and it's going to immediately switch the radio to whatever home channel you have programmed in, or by default, it'll go, I think it goes to VFO 144 megahertz. I don't have a home channel programmed into either of these radios. It's something that I think I'll do as we go through the set menu and go ahead and set one up myself. But let's go ahead and see what this does when you set it off. So if you have earplugs in, or if you have the radio, or if you have your computer turned up loud, you might want to turn it down a little bit. And I'm going to hold this down for 3 full seconds, and let's see what she does. So 1001, 1002, 1003. Okay, you get the loud tone, you get the flashing screen. Just a short press turns it off, but it takes it to, in brackets, you see an H, and you see 144 megahertz. So that's the preset home channel for this radio. If you had, for instance, your preferred repeater, the one that you hit the best, that would be a good one to plug in, or whatever repeater you can hit at the moment. If you're thinking about it, for instance, if you're hiking, that would be a good thing. So you don't have to fiddle with anything, get you right there. And of course, we just press VM and we go back into memory mode. Now let's see on the FT-65 the same process and see what it does. So 1001, 1002, 1003. Okay, this is a little different in that we have a flashing light and we have that tone. Short press turns it all off, and again in this case took it to 144 megahertz. A little bit different display in how it outputs that, but same thing. Now where could that be useful? Obviously, if it was a legitimate emergency, you were lost and people were searching for you, you got wind that searchers were nearby and you wanted to draw their attention in your direction. Working on the supposition that you might be parched, you might have the inability to yell out loudly, you might not have a whistle or any other signaling device. That little noise right there might make the difference in getting someone to hone in on your position and come help you out. So it's a useful thing, and like I said, fortunately it's on a long press. I've never set it off accidentally, so it's not a problem, but it is something to know if you're out, if you're somewhere where you definitely wouldn't want to set this off in a movie theater or a church, that's for certain. So but let's talk about the two other things that the orange button does on this particular radio. If you give it a short press, it will activate the light that's on the front of the radio. It's just a simple LED, and it's not particularly powerful, but it's enough to illuminate, for instance, a lock if you're trying to get a key into it, so that can be helpful. So a little short press turns it back off. Now, if we were to, and I'll skip ahead a little bit, this is called an F button. We'll talk about that in a moment. But if I were to press the F button and then give it a short press, well, now we get a little party piece. Now, this was happening during the alert tone. The screen didn't flash, but what you did have flashing was that light. And if you know what you're, know how to, a little bit about CW, that is flashing out SOS in Morse code. So it's a nifty little party trick. I don't think the light would have any real reach to it, but it would be a really quick learning tool. If you had a stronger flashlight, you'd learn the sequence for flashing that out to a helicopter above. So it's a good thing. I don't mind it being on there. That's kind of cool. Now let's work again counterclockwise. We're going to go around the radio. We have our push to talk button on the side here. The push to talk button is of a trigger design. This is something I actually happen to like because it works really good with gloves. I've found that when wearing gloves and you have the flush mounted PTT, it can sometimes be difficult to actuate the PTT. So that is definitely helpful. Some people have complained that they have difficulty compressing it. I've never had that difficulty because I tend to press right in the center. I think what's happening is people are coming in having, been really conditioned to pressing directly on the side of the radio. They're catching this little built-up area underneath the PTT. They don't complain about it on the FT-70. They actually say the FT-70 is easier to do because it doesn't actually have that. It's built up on the side, but the center portion here kind of goes down to the 3 buttons beneath, so it is easier to hit. But in any event, I think Yaesu is stepping away from this in their newer designs because the FT-5 has a different kind of PTT. They've gotten away from the trigger, so that's kind of a shame. I happen to like it. Now coming down, both radios, again, they're going to be pretty much identical in everything I'm talking about here, but just beneath the PTT, you have your Monty button. And what the Monty button does, it eliminates any squelch adjustments that have been done to the radio so that you hear all of the signal. Where this comes in handy is if you have someone that's on the edge of the range for the radio and you're just catching little snippets, you can hit the Monty button and you will hear all of the signals, so you can catch little parts that aren't getting through. You can catch those. May not be enough to open the squelch on your radio, but you can definitely hear them coming through and might be able to make out the message at that point. Now, if I were to press, again, F key, we'll talk more about this in just a second, but if I press F key and then Monty, that gets me into my squelch adjustment. And my squelch adjustment, I can carry out any changes to that just by arrowing up and down. I keep these radios on a 3. And obviously the higher you go, the more squelch you apply, all the way to the point of a 9 would be no signal getting through at all. And going all the way down to a 0, it would be wide open in here, full static. To get out of this, just press the F key again. So let's see what it looks like on the FT4. So we press the F key and the Monty, and we get a little bit bigger display, but it's the same process. So make your adjustments, then press your F key, and you are good to go. So the F key, let's talk about what that is and what it does. The F key is your function key, and the F key is something that you're going to press right before you do a number of different things on here, and it's going to allow you, for instance, to get into your set menu, and it'll also allow you to do some things with shortcut keys. Moving to the front panel, like I said, we're not going to actually get into the programming menu at this point. But we are going to talk about some of the features that can be carried out by pressing buttons on here. For instance, our VM button, our band button, and our up-down arrow keys, and a couple of other things. So we'll start with the VM button. That is going to be your VFO and memory mode. Pressing one, so I'll cycle through on this one. So if I press the VM button, I'm currently in memory mode. So if I press that, it's going to take me to my FM radio band. Okay, now it's going to be different on the 4X. I'll tell you that right now. So let's get out of that. I don't want to violate any FCC rules there. But once I'm here, okay, now if I press it again, it takes me back to memory mode. So I press V, it takes me to VFO mode. So if I'm all the way down 104.200, could I go up to like 441.00? Yes, you could. But a shortcut to that would be if you press your band button, it's going to give you 3 different selections. So right here we're in broadcast FM. I press it again and it takes me to VHF, and I press it again and it takes me to UHF. And then I go right back again. I press it one more time there, it takes me back to memory mode. So get a little bit of options here. And one thing I'll tell you on this radio, the broadcast FM is actually pretty darn good. Way better than any of the Baofeng radios. You actually genuinely get some listenable FM. But on the FT-4X, how is it different? Well, the FT-4X, if again, I'm in memory mode here, so I press and I get basically an A and a B. Now, the A and the B can be whatever you want them to be within the confines of the radio. So right now, I have A set at, it gives me VHF, and if I press the V button again, it takes me to UHF. Now, I could make both of those VHF if I wanted to. But it cycles through differently. Like here it's either VFO or memory, but here it's memory, VFO1, VFO2, memory. So a little bit different in application. Don't know why, it just is. So I guess the question is, and I haven't tried this, so I'm going to do this live. So let's go to 102.700. Oh, that's 107. Nope, it doesn't give me FM broadcast. So it appears, and I'll check on this later, but it doesn't even look like the FT-4X has FM broadcast, whereas the FT-65 doesn't, or does. So, okay, there's one more thing the FT-65 does that the FT-4X doesn't. Now let's talk about the next thing relative to memory channels, and that would be accessing memory banks. Both of these radios will allow you to allocate pre-programmed memory channels into usable banks so that you can have different types of radios set up. I've talked a bit about banks before, but the way to get into that is your band button on both radios. You do a long press, and it takes you to your selection so you can go through banks. So at this point, I have no bank, so I'm going to go up to bank 1, and I'm going to press the VM key. And now I'm in my first bank. My first bank contains all of my local amateur radio repeaters and simplex channels. So from here, I can scan. Now, if I press scan, now I'll talk about that in a moment, it'll scan just within the bank instead of all of the programmed memories. So it can cut everything down to a much smaller slice of the pie. For instance, if you have channels set up for a county that's 200 miles away, it's not going to scan any of those channels. Or if you want to separate public safety frequencies from amateur radio frequencies and not scan the public safety stuff, you can do that. You can set them up however the heck you want to set them up. But if I want to get out of banks and just go back into straight memory, I just hold that down again, and then just arrow down to no bank, press V, and we're good to go, or VM. With the FT-65, it's pretty much identical. In this case, the button's in a different spot. Here it was one in bottom, or one in from the lower right. Here it's actually on the lower right. We just hold that down, and then we can arrow up, press VM, and then I'm into banks. And then let's go ahead and get out of this, go back down, no bank, and I'm out. So now I have access to all of the memory channels. And now we get to scan. So let's say I do want to go ahead and scan, and I'm going to move into a bank to do this. I don't want to broadcast any local police stuff. Okay, so we're within a bank. We want to go ahead and scan. It's only going to scan the channels in the bank. If I want to scan, I can elect to scan upwards or downwards, and all we're simply going to do is a long press on the up or down arrow key. Let's go down arrow key, and it's now descending downward. You can see 146, and we're going all the way down. There, that's what happens when you have GMRS scheduled in. So, and then we can scan upwards by just holding that key down, and we scan upwards. If at any point you want to stop, just hit that key, short press. You can also stop it by hitting the press to talk button. That will stop your scan as well. The FT-4X carried out exactly the same way. So we'll go to bank, select bank 1, hold down the arrow key, long press, and it scans. Short press shuts you down, and that's all there is to it. So now let's talk for just a second. Let me get out of here. One of the last things we're going to want to talk about is how to navigate your memory channels that you have programmed in. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Let's go ahead and get out of banks if we're in it. Good. All right. So if I want to select a channel or move from one channel to another, obviously your up-down arrow key, that is one way of doing it. So if I wanted to bounce back and forth between repeater 1 and repeater 2 on our club here, this is Tulare County Radio Club. I had to shorten it. It's usually TCARC. We have 1 and 2. Actually, we have more than that, but I'm just worried about the VHF and the UHF repeater. I'm currently on the VHF repeater. If I wanted to check out the UHF repeater, just hit the arrow key, and there you go. That's a real quick way of it moving between adjacent or closely grouped channels. And this is channel 98. You can see kind of up here in the upper left-hand corner, you get the number. The number's a little bigger on the FT-4X here on channel 114. So let's say within here I want to go to channel 20. Well, let's go to channel 14. So all I'm simply going to do is just press in 1, 4, and hold. And it takes us to channel 14, which is an FRS channel, and it's FRS 14. If I want to go back, I can just type in 97, and that takes me back to where I was before. So if you know the channel number or you know the neighborhood that it's in, for instance, I know public safety frequencies for this radio are up around like 150. So I type in 150 here, and it takes me to, nope, that's Fresno County actually, 180. Let's try 180. Yeah, Tulare County Sheriff's Office 2, and there's Tulare County Sheriff's Office 1. Then go back to 97. And so, of course, you can manually punch in the numbers as well. You can also have channels allocated to your priority buttons here, your P1, 2, 3, 4, or your P1 and 2 on the FT-4X. So that's your basic operations of the radio. Like I said, I didn't get into the menu systems because there's 2 menu systems. You have a system menu, and then you have an operations menu, or also known as a set menu. We're going to be getting into that next. The first of the menu systems I'm going to get into actually is going to be the systems menu. And in that, I'm going to show you how to access that, and then I'm also going to go ahead and show you how to do the Mars Cap mod on both of these radios from that menu. So that'll probably be the subject of the next video. But with that, I'll go ahead and bring it to a close. This one went a little longer than most of them are going to go. The remaining videos will probably be quite a bit shorter, but this had to serve as an intro. Moving forward, they'll probably be 5 minutes or less, and they'll be very, very focused on performing a certain thing or a certain function. But with this groundwork set, we can do a lot of that moving forward. So with that, I will thank you for watching and wish you a wonderful day. This is Scott, Kilo Sierra 6, Delta Alpha Yankee in Southwest Visalia, California, 73s.